Just an ordinary outdoor shed, you say? No, says I. This is a generator shed, also known as a generator enclosure or a generator doghouse. So I'm going to walk you through today kind of the basics about this. I'm going to show another video about how I actually made it, but today we're just getting into the story of what it is, what it's for, and how I use it. So what is a generator shed? Well, a generator shed is basically an enclosure for your generator, a regular portable generator that you can pick up almost anywhere, and you can run it no matter the weather. So if it's storming outside, raining, rain and electricity, they don't mix too well. And so this is one way you can run a generator when it's storming. So it comes in really handy in like hurricane areas. Truthfully, here in my area, I hardly ever lose power. I've only ever lost power once for more than a few hours, and that was for about a week and a half, and that was right after a tornado struck our town here. But I've been kind of getting back in this prepper mindset and trying to be prepared for things, especially after these power outages and stuff in Texas last winter. And so this is the solution that I came up with, and it works well for me. Now, basically what this is a redneck version of a whole house generator. So, you got your whole house generator that you can have installed to your house. It's got an automatic transfer switch. Power goes out, it kicks on. There's just a few seconds delay. Everything keeps going like normal. But that comes at a huge cost. This isn't cheap by the time I got done with it, but it's sure as heck a lot cheaper than the whole house generator. So stick around and we'll walk you through our hillbilly generator shed. So let's talk about if you actually need a generator shed. Can you use a portable generator with your house without a generator shed? Of course you can. But the issue is that the weather, like I said before, can be a factor in it. So, if it's not raining, it's no issue at all. You put a generator outside. They say to try to keep it 20 feet from your house. We're not quite there. This post right here is at 20 feet, and the exhaust is about right here. But we'll go through all that in the video on how I built the generator shed. But as with everything motor related, when you're running around your house, carbon monoxide is an issue. I'm not a professional. This is do at your own risk kind of thing. I'm just showing you what I did here. But that is something to keep on the very highest alert in your mind about the carbon monoxide being able to leach into your home from a generator from outside. What other options are there besides building a generator enclosure if you want to run your generator in the rain? Well, you can put up some temporary roofing over that somehow. I've seen some people do some stuff that they just, put a couple screws in, take up and down. And then there's generator tents. They're called gen tents. You can get them on Amazon. I'll link the one to this particular generator in the description below so you can take a look at it if you want to. But it just takes a little bit more setup time, but it's probably not a bad plan for most people for backup power, no more than you're going to be using it. I wanted something that was always ready to go, didn't have to have hardly any setup, and was just ready at a moment's notice, and that's why I went this direction here. So what can you make a generator shed out of? Most people use one or two options. And the first option is going to be like this. It's going to be a pre-made plastic shed. I wasn't the biggest fan of that, but we'll get into how we got here in just a minute. And the other is from lumber and traditional carpentry. That's really the route that I wanted to go. For the first time ever, I thought I'm going to use somebody else's plans, and I bought the plans over iCreatables, and I really like their generator shed. They have a few different videos on how to make one. And for once, I was going to use their plan so that basically I didn't have to go to the store 5 million times when I was making this shed, right? But the problem, there's a couple of things that I wanted to change with it. And by the time I changed the plans, because I wanted to make the roofing a little bit bigger because they didn't have any overhang because they were trying to keep costs down. But that's the biggest thing that I changed on it. And this is 2021 and we're post-COVID. And for those of you that don't know, building materials have gone insane. So my little generator shed that was just a little bigger than a doghouse, basically this same size right here, I priced it out in the lumber and materials alone, just for the shed without turning it into the generator shed, was $800. $800. So that's why I went this route and I used the plastic shed. This was about $275, I believe. I got it at Lowe's. I will say that I saw a few on Amazon that had been used, and a lot of people use the Suncast sheds, and that's okay. But in order for me to buy one, I really wanted to get my hands on one. I wanted to see what the construction was on the inside. I wanted to see how well built it was, because you're obviously going to take some of the structural support out of it when you start cutting holes in it for vents and such. All right, guys, so let's talk about the pros of a generator shed like this. We already mentioned a couple, but we're going to go through them all here. So number one, it's always ready to go. It's out of the weather. We already went through those two. But I have to say, you know, there's some security issue here. You can put a little lock on this, you know, depending on how anal you are, what kind of area you live in, then I can understand that. You can also, if you're going to install it on concrete, or I guess technically ground, you could put a rod in the ground. You can take an eye bolt and you can put a chain, cut a hole in the bottom of the generator shed, and chain the generator down to the ground. Now, chains and locks, they're not the most secure things, especially these days with battery powered grinders and bolt cutters and all that stuff, but it is an extra layer of security and usually does help keep a semi-honest person semi-honest. There is one other issue with these type of enclosures that really help, and that's the fact that it surrounds the generator. So what do you think that does? Well, I'll tell you, it makes it quieter. Now, some sound's going to get out because you have all this ventilation that you've put in and you have holes that you've cut in the side, but it will quieten it down significantly, I believe. I do have a decibel meter on the video of the installation. I'm going to go ahead and see how much quieter it is now versus before we installed it and made any changes on it. So let's talk about cons. Obviously, there's got to be some cons to this whole thing, right? Number one, it's going to take up permanent space in your yard. Number two, it's the whole carbon monoxide thing you got to be careful of. And number three is going to be the cost, because it's not free. Stuff's expensive these days. But, you know, it's a cost analysis on what's it worth to you. Now, there's one final thing that's a major con with these things, and I would put it at the top of the list, and that's going to be heat. These things get hot. They got engines that are running on these generators, and it's going to heat up in there. So for that reason, you have to have a lot of ventilation, and you got to keep this thing cool. I've seen videos online of people running generators in these plastic sheds and melting the plastic. Now I'm going to show you in my install video how I mitigated those risks, but they are definitely there. And if you don't make it out of plastic, you make it out of wood, instead of a melting hazard, you have a fire hazard. So you have to be careful with that. But the basic principles are that you got to have plenty of ventilation in there. You have to have an exhaust port, getting the exhaust out of there as quickly as possible. And so those are some things that we're going to look at in the next video on this generator shed. And one of the final things you got to think about whenever you have a generator shed, or just a generator, you don't even have to have the shed. If you got a generator in a house, you got to figure out how you're going to power your house with your generator. You got to get the power from here to there. How are you going to do that? So there's a couple of different ways that we'll get into in a little more detail later if it seems like it's something that people want to hear about. So there's transfer switches, which is what we have, and then there's interlock kits. And they perform the same task two different ways. And so a transfer switch, what it does is you have a power inlet on the side of your house that you install. You plug the generator in. The way those work is they take the power, but instead of putting it through the breaker or the fuse like normal, it reroutes it there at the panel box over to a secondary panel, which then becomes a power selector for a few different circuits. And so because of that, what you end up with is you have this power inlet that goes straight basically to the power distribution center of the transfer switch, And on that, you select whether your power is coming from outside the house, or whether it's off, or whether it's on the generator power only for that circuit. And that's really safe on how it does that, because basically it keeps all those lines from interchanging. And so all it is basically a real fancy power selector. With an interlock switch, you know, just an overview of that, basically what it is, it's not really a switch, it's more of a panel. But you install that on your power panel, and then when you install that, basically it forces you to have the main breaker turned off in order to have your power inlet breaker turned on, which will then backfeed from a power inlet that you attach to your house. Both of these are the only legal ways that I know of that you can actually do this. There are other ways. One is called the suicide plug. It's not legal, and that should tell you something just by the name, suicide plug. It means it's a bad idea, don't do it. As with any of this stuff, if you don't know what you're doing, do not do this. Get somebody that's a licensed electrician to help you, okay? Now, in order to get my power from the generator to the house, you want a really thick extension cord. This is 10 gauge. This is a twist lock adapter, so it won't come out. And this is what my transfer switch is, and it's what the generator has on the other end. But I installed an outlet on the outside of the box, so we can just plug in to the box, and then we can plug into the house. I do want to say real quick that Bouge RV, Bouge RV, they sent me this as a promotional item for my honest review. And from what I can tell, the cord is very thick, it's well made, the ends are very, very strong and industrial, and I think this is going to hold up a lot, and we're going to go through and put it through its paces. But this thing, I'm telling you, for the price, it's somewhere around $50. I'm going to have a link on Amazon down in the description, but you can't beat it. I mean, just if you were to buy the wire and buy the ends to put on the wire, then it's going to be probably more than just buying the extension cord. And so I'm pretty happy with it so far, and I'll let you know how it goes, and we'll take a closer look at this later. So guys, that's going to do it for this overview video of the generator shed. I'm going to, you know, put some pictures and stuff on here, but you know, basically that's all there is to it, and that's why I did this, and I'm very happy with the way it came out. And we'll look into it on how I made it in the next video. Please stick around and watch it if you're interested in how I made it, how I insulated it, how I wired it, all that stuff. I'll share it with you on the next video. Thanks for watching, stay tuned, and I hope you learned something.
Do not forget to hit that subscribe button.